Well, welcome everybody to the Sandburg Library Help Me Cite It Right workshop. I'm Marla Turgeon. I'm your Sandburg librarian, and Rebecca Eaton is helping with us today, and of course she'll be our chat monitor. So let's go ahead. I'm going to turn off my camera. There we go. Oh, that went fast that time. That's good. My computer's been laggy this morning. So let's go ahead and get started then. Okay, so we'll start with what is plagiarism? Well, here's the Oxford English Dictionary's definition. But in other words, it's just simply uncredited use, both intentional and unintentional, of somebody else's words or ideas. So is it plagiarism if I borrow someone's ideas or if I use their actual words? Well, the answer is both. You need to clearly quote and cite when you use someone else's words, and you need to do the same minus the quotes when you use their ideas. Now, I want you to understand that adding to the world of scholarship is about building on another's previous work, and you need to respect that work by not only citing their words, but also their ideas. I want you to think of it this way. If a fact or idea you bring up in your paper turns out to be inaccurate, a citation can either help you make your argument or, at the very least, show your intent. So what does plagiarism look like? Well, first, this includes buying papers, finding papers on the internet, or using a friend's work. The college uses a plagiarism detection service, and it's called Turnitin. And this service is going to find out if you've copied someone else's work. If you've been caught plagiarizing, it can result in a failure for the assignment or for the course, and can also result in disciplinary action from the college. Second, you must use in-text citations along with the complete citation on your works cited page. And yes, if you don't cite previous work that you have personally authored, it's considered self-plagiarism. And the reason for this is if you don't acknowledge that it's from past work, the reader believes it's a new and original idea. It's not ethical, and it's considered academic fraud. If you have information from a previous paper that you'd like to reuse, just simply ask your instructor about it and see what they think. Now, third, you cannot change a few words or the arrangement of words in someone else's work and turn it in as your own. And this is where learning to paraphrase comes in. And then last, I want you to keep track of all sources you use as you're doing your research and you're writing your paper, so you don't accidentally reuse someone else's words and forget where that information came from. So now that you know what plagiarism is, let's concentrate on how not to do it by learning to cite correctly. So for in-text citations, whenever you use a quotation or paraphrase information from another work in your paper, it's essential that you use in-text citations. And this is done by putting your citation in parentheses in the body of your paper. Now, MLA uses an author page number system for in-text citing. On the next few slides, I'm going to show you the basics, but remember there are additional rules for MLA style. You'll need to go to the MLA style manual, the library's LibGuide, or the Purdue OWL for extra assistance. MLA in-text citations include the last name of the author followed by the page number enclosed in parentheses. And I want you to notice in this first example, there's not a comma between the name and the page number. MLA style, they like to keep it clean that way. In the example with two authors, use an and between author names, and again, there's no comma there. And in the example with three or more authors, use et al. That's the Latin abbreviation meaning and others. And then a period will go behind the al in this case. Now, some online sources are not going to have page numbers. In this case, simply use the author's name in parentheses. For example, if an article from one of the library's databases doesn't show a clear page number on your screen, then don't use it in your in-text citation. Don't try to count paragraphs or pages. Notice how also the period is inserted behind the parentheses to show that the sentence has ended too. So what are quotations and when should I use those? Well, quotations are the exact word or words of an author copied directly from a source, okay? We want you to use quotes sparingly, though. Most of your paper really should be in your own words. All quotations, of course, will require a formal citation, and this includes the in-text citing as well as the citation on your works cited page. Okay, so this slide has an example of how a quote appears when you in-text cite. The author here his last name is Roth, and the page number that the quote can be found on is included in that in-text citation. When you have more than one author, then follow the rules for multiple authors that we just went over. Okay, so we're going to do question time now. A student writes a paper that includes the following passage. It's at the top of the slide. I want you to go ahead and read it along with the highlighted part that is on that screenshot below. I'm going to give you about 30 to 45 seconds to read it. Okay, so now I want to ask a question. I want you guys to go, I think you go to the chat box and click it to open. If not, it might just pop up on your screen. I know yesterday it did for me. Rebecca is going to insert a poll, and I want you to answer yes or no, and I think it says maybe too. Hey, if you guys are seeing this, I want you to just answer yes or no or maybe if you think that this was plagiarized or not. Okay. Okay, so it looks like we have all the responses then. Okay, so let's go on. Thank you guys for responding to that. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll show you that, yes, this was plagiarized. It's probably unintentional, and maybe it was just a simple typing error on the student's part, but anytime passages are used verbatim, they must be placed within quotation marks, okay? Notice the correct way to cite this. The quotation mark should have been around that entire passage. Also, notice that there was not a page number present for this article, so I didn't use it in that in-text citation. Okay, so now let's move on to paraphrasing next. Paraphrasing is a restatement in your own words of someone else's idea to back up your opinions. Now, changing a few words of the original statement or trying to stitch together a bunch of different phrases from other authors or within the same article is not paraphrasing. That's actually quoting the source. You can't just stitch stuff together or just change words, okay? You need to change both the words and the sentence structure without changing the meaning. So it's also a misconception to believe that you're relying too much on other sources. It's actually to your advantage to use these quality resources to back up your ideas. Good paraphrasing will help make the ideas of the source fit well into your paper, okay? Just make sure you're not copying someone else's ideas, but adding to your perceptions of the argument as well. Okay, so here's some steps to help you with paraphrasing. First, read and reread the section until you fully understand the meaning. Second, now that you understand the meaning, try a quick rewrite. Then third, check to make sure your version fits with your message. 4, you must use quotation marks around unique terms or phrases that you're borrowing from the source. And then 5, I want you to record the source so you don't forget about it later, okay? And remember to always use that in-text citation after you paraphrase. So here's an example of how paraphrasing looks when you do an in-text citation. Hunt is the author, and the page number the original idea was found on is page 65. Now, when you have more than one author, then follow those rules that we talked about for multiple authors from before, okay? And there we go. Okay, so question time again. I'm going to have you guys tell me if this is or isn't considered plagiarism, okay? The top passage is the original text, and the next is the student's rewrite of the text. So I'm going to give you about 30 to 45 seconds to read these. Is everybody starting to answer already?
Yeah, is it still going pretty slow on your end, Marla?
Yes, super slow. It's terrible.
That's okay. I can read out the results here as they're coming in. So far, we have 2 with maybe, 3 with no, and 5 with yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so that gives about everybody then, doesn't it? Okay, thanks again, guys, for answering that question. So then, yeah, let's go on to the next slide. Maybe it's dragging for me. Okay, so yeah, this was plagiarism also. As you can see, the words the student used are crossed out in that example down below in red. This student didn't rewrite that sentence in their own words, okay? They only substituted the words with synonyms, and that's not considered paraphrasing, okay? That's straight up plagiarism is what that is. So you need to rewrite the content of the sentence in your own words, and then of course in text cite the section. Okay, so now we're going to move on to signal phrases. A signal phrase is a short phrase that introduces a quote or a paraphrase, and it's a signal to your reader that an outside source is being used. Now, we learned when using in-text citations that the citation is generally located at the end of the sentence with the author's name and page number, right? But if you refer to the author's name in a sentence, you don't have to include the author's name again as part of your in-text citation. I have a side note here too. Maybe some of you noticed that I used a square bracket and capitalized the first word in the quotation example. MLA states that after a verb of saying in your writing, for example, writes, says, states, exclaims, or suggests, you should capitalize regardless of the case that's used in the original source. Okay, so now I'm going to walk you guys through putting together your citation for the Works Cited page, okay, with an article from one of the library's Gale databases. Now, this is going to go pretty fast, and I'm not going to be able to tell you everything that you need to know about MLA citations. There's just too much. The point is, I want to explain the process to you. Okay, so we start with the author first. The name's usually around the top of the article. And in this case, as you can see from the screenshot, and in the case with most all Gale database articles, the information you'll need is going to be at the top of the page. So the author here is Joanne Margaret Hines Duzel, and I just can't copy the name right over, all right? MLA requires the author's name to be inverted. So it's going to be written as Hines Duzel, comma, Joanne Margaret. And since we only have one author, we add a period to indicate that this part's done. Now the article's title comes next. This is going to be at the top of the document also. And there's 2 things you should know about article titles. The first thing is when you copy them into a citation, you format them by MLA rules. Sometimes you might run across a title of an article that is printed in all caps or all lowercase letters, but MLA requires it to be in title case. And title case is the technical term for capitalizing the first letters of the important words in that title. And that's shown on the first bullet on this slide. The second thing you should know about article titles is that the title should be encased in quotation marks. In MLA, quotation marks indicate small works that are enclosed inside of larger works. And this is an article that's held inside of a journal or a magazine. Next, we close the title with a period, which goes inside that final quote. So your citation so far should look like this: Hines Duzel, comma, Joanne Margaret, period, quotation mark, practice and motor learning, period, quotation mark. So after the article information comes the journal title, and this is where the article lives, or is what MLA calls the container. In this case, the container is a journal called The Physical Educator. Journals, they get their titles in italics because they're larger works. So there's no period after this title though, because journals don't just have titles in their section. So use a comma here. Now here's other things that journals have, volumes and issues and dates. Volumes have multiple issues, just like TV shows have multiple episodes within a season. Volumes are like seasons and their issues are like episodes. So this article is from volume 59, issue 2, and we note it in the citation as lowercase VOL period 59 comma lowercase NO period and 2 comma. And in case you didn't notice, the NO stands for issue number. Now dates can be a little bit trickier. The article might just give you a year, it might give you a month and a year, or it may give you the season and year. Whatever it supplies, the rule is to include as much of the information date as the source is giving you. In this case, we see that the issue was published in spring 2002, so that's what we include. The new 9th edition of MLA style came out this past spring, and one of those changes is for seasons. In the past, we capitalized the season, but now the seasons should be listed in lowercase within the citation. I want you to also notice that we're still working within this section, so we're using commas throughout. And when a section is complete, that's when the period goes in, okay? And of course, the exception here is after abbreviations. If page numbers were shown in this database, then we would include those at this point, depending on the paging, using either a P period or a single page for a single page, or PP period used for multiple pages. Then a period at the end of the page numbers. But there were no page numbers given to us, so we will just put a period after the date. And this is how the citation looks at this point. So then at the end of the citation, we still need to indicate the database that the article came from. I found this one in Gale Academic 1 file. MLA states that the database is also a container, so the name should be in italics. And note that one file is one word. That's the actual brand name for this database, so we leave that as is. We don't separate that. And then when you're done with this, you put a comma after the database name. Now, if you found an article online, such as this one was, you need to add the URL. Look for a link called permalink, stable link, or get link on that article page. These are links that won't change. Don't use that URL link that you have in your browser, because it's not going to work for your instructor or for yourself later on. Okay. Some articles will have what's also called a digital object identifier, or DOI. If one is present there, use it instead of the permalink or URL. Now add a period at the end of the section. And then this is what your citation is going to look like. But there's more. MLA citations require a hanging indent. And that means that the first line of each citation starts at the left margin, and the subsequent lines are indented after that. Don't use the tab key for this. The spacing is going to be off. Instead, give it a hanging indent using your word processing software. Okay. And don't forget to double space. And your works cited list needs to be in alphabetical order. Now, if you don't know how to do any of those things, like the hanging indent, feel free to ask any library staff member. We all know how to do it. Okay, so here's some tips to prevent plagiarism. First, I want you to plan your paper and start your research early. This is going to lead to a lot less stress for you too. Second, take notes and stay organized. Keep those notes together digitally, or either write them down. When you're writing your paper, make sure that you're being clear, okay? Make sure you're transparent about what ideas are yours and what you're using from the source, and then make sure you cite it. If you're in doubt, just cite the source, okay? Finally, the library has a product called LibGuides. These are online guides that can answer questions about citations and research and any other library type stuff that you may need help with. Rebecca, she already did it, I see, has put a link in the chat. So I would say go out, try to click on that and try to bookmark it if you can for future reference. And I want you guys to remember that I'm here to help you with any questions you might have in citations. Sometimes it's not so straightforward as it was with this article that was in a library database. There's a lot of web sources out there that you might need help with, or even books, So feel free to get a hold of me and get some help with those citations, okay? I'm available most all the time. You can send me an email, or we can even do a Teams meeting, and I can walk you through some citations, okay? And here's the Works Cited page. While we're here, I'd like to point out that there's different styles of citation in the world of academic writing. I only really shared information about MLA style in this workshop. I want you to make sure that you're using the citation style that your instructor is requiring, okay? You can find that information usually in your syllabus or in the paper assignment directions. And if they're not there, then just simply ask your instructor, they'll let you know. Okay, so, well, this is the end of the presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Could I have emails, please? The best thing you can do, Kaylee, is email that library at sandburg.edu, and that is going to go to myself, Rebecca, and to Abby. And depending on what the question is, if it's citations, then I'll end up picking it up, okay? But that's a good general email to get a hold of us for any questions you might have about library services. Great. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.